Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'll be talking about Secrets of the Lost Station by Everything Epic Games. It's designed by Jim Sammartino and Chris Batarlis, and it's a game for 1 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, which plays on average in about 2 hours per scenario. Now this game has a lot of scenarios. There's about 92 scenarios in this game, so there is a lot of gameplay here, and it's a cooperative sci-fi space exploration game. You're on this huge station, a lost station, and it has rooms that you will be discovering, and it's gonna be randomly organized every time you play. So there's a lot to discover here. I'd like to thank Everything Epic Games for donating a copy for me to review. And before I start explaining how to set up and play the game and share my thoughts, I'd like to ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really does help the channel a lot. And also please check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support what I do. Patrons of my channel get early access to all of my videos, access to Patreon exclusive videos, their name in the credits, and you also save up for physical goodies such as the BGH enamel pin. All right, let's get started with the game. To set up a game of Secrets of the Lost Station, first of all, you need to choose a scenario from the scenario guide. This is a big book with a lot of scenarios in it. There's 92 in total, and these are all the scenarios listed here. There's several campaigns you're playing. This is the core campaign, which has 13 missions. Then there's the Lycaon Chronicles, which follows. Then there's Machinations, Lost Missions 1, Resurrection, Lost Missions 2, etc. There's a whole bunch of missions to play, and some of them play completely differently. The Oblivion one adds a new way of playing to the game. So there is the first campaign, which is basically your tutorial, and it will teach you how to set up the game as well, and it will also teach you how different things work in the game. I would advise that after you've played the core campaign training grounds mission, the tutorial, that you do read the rules fully, because there are some details that aren't really discussed in the tutorial, but it will, teach you the general gist of the game. But for now, for this example, I'm gonna set up mission 3. Let's say that's where we left off, human intervention. And then of course you need to determine how many players are playing. I'm just gonna leave this here for now. So if you're playing 4 or more players, you simply pick your character and their character's dashboard. But if you have 3 or fewer players, there's a couple of changes you need to make. Every player has, of course, their own dashboard, which looks like this. This is your so-called ARM device, the ARM. And you have your character card, which you can place inside it. You also have this small EOP token, which you use to indicate whether you've used your once per game ability or not. So I just keep this on here until I use it, and then I discard that token. You have these colored cubes, which always are set at the starting value, which is indicated with a color on your card. This can be different for different characters, of course, and every character also has different stats as listed here. Now, in a solo game, in a one-player game, every player can have 2 companions. In a 2-player game, you get 1 companion, and in a 3-player game, you don't get companions, same as with 4, 5, or 6 players. But in a solo game, you get an audacity bonus of +3. So this is your audacity, so you can start with 1, 2, 3 extra audacity. In a 2-player game, both players get +2, so you would start out 2 higher than your starting audacity. And same goes in a 3-player game. And in a 1, 2, or 3-player game, the enemies also get shield tokens, which I will explain later. Some scenarios will tell you that certain explorers must be chosen. So in this case, that's Jack Holden. So even if you're playing solo, you have to select that character. And then the other optional players can choose any other character. So every player takes their ARM device, puts their card on and their cubes. And if you've unlocked any other character cards, such as this one, this is a Jack Holden combat upgrade card. There's a level 1 and a level 2 side. Will tell you that you have muscle memory. So when you're unfocused, you have base attack value. And when you're focused, you get a +1. I will explain what that means in a bit. But you put that card at level 1 underneath your ARM dashboard right here. So everybody takes their dashboard, their cubes, their cards, and you also get a character card which has a special ability here as well. So anytime you gain power, you gain an extra power, which is basically your XP, and that is used to upgrade your abilities later. It can also happen that certain explorers cannot be played, and that will be specified in the setup of that mission. Next, you place the Icarus shuttle tile in the middle of the table, as well as the docking station tile. And one side will have this white door that is basically the exterior door that locks onto the external ships. And these white lines on the other sides, those are interior doors. So you set that up and then you check the scenario setup if there are any special tiles that you need to set aside. In this case, we have a number of tiles right here that are specified. So you take all of your unlocked tiles and you check those. So you've got communications, research lab, the med bay, the holding cell, the security chamber, the maximum security, and the detention deck. And I'll take those 7 tiles and set those aside for now. All the other tiles are simply shuffled and placed in a top-down deck in easy reach. So I'll just put those here next to the dice, which we will also need. There's a lot more than this, but I just took a handful, and these 6-sided dice as well. Then take your character standee and put them in the docking station. So if we're playing a 3-player game, the other players might have taken these characters. So you put them all in there. And again, if the specific scenario that you're playing tells you that there's a different starting layout, such as this one, you put those there. So let me just quickly find the storage bay and the bridge. So that's these. So we got the storage bay first, and again, check how you need to place them. In this case, the storage bay text is up here, and it has a door here, as you can see, with a white line there, and that will match up with the other white line. So this is a door that can open, and the bridge is oriented like this because this only has one exit right here. All the other sides are closed off, so I'll put that there. Now the storage bay has a search symbol with a 3 in it. This is also specified here. There's a search symbol and it says 3 times this search token, which is usually the case. If you find that symbol on a tile, you take that number of search tokens and you place those on the tile, and that means that explorers can search for items there. And in some cases, the scenario will specify that they might find something specific. And the bridge requires a quest token. So you take one of these triangular quest tokens and you place it on the bridge. Next, you also take the station system board. There's a station ability board. There's some nice art on the back here. And you take the objective card of the specific scenario that you're playing, and you place that on the station board as well. And this card will tell you on one side what the different objectives are. So as you can see here, this is the 3 objectives we need to fulfill. And the other side will tell you which scenario triggers there are. So every time one of these things happen, you will read in the scenario guide here, one of these things here, and that will happen. So don't read ahead just yet, only read those when that triggers. Now in previous scenarios, you will also have unlocked certain station ability cards. So in this case, we have this deck of cards and they have this symbol on the back here, which is also listed here. And it says here, choose one system, shuffle matching tile into top 10 in stack. So we have, in this case, unlocked just 2 cards here, because this says here, this is core content, and all of the decks will be in order. They are also numbered. This is a 1, and here it says number 2 in the bottom. It's very small, but they are numbered, and this is number 3. So we've only unlocked these 2 so far if we're at mission 3. So we can now choose one of these according to this setup here. Sometimes you might use more, and you put that on your station ability board. So as a party, you simply pick which one of these you want to use, and you put that on the board, and the other one is simply put back into the box. And after completing a mission, the mission will tell you which cards you will unlock, and that can be station system cards, those can be monsters, those can be any kind of other things, even heroes. And all of that is explained on this card. This basically tells you which cards are unlocked at the very start of the game. And these tiles here, for example, are used for these specific following missions, so you don't use them sooner. And this is also locked content, so this is specifically for a campaign, and this is locked, and that gets unlocked as you play. Same with these cards here. You can find these campaign content cards. These are white, and the red ones are locked and need to be unlocked, and that will happen automatically. Now, if you choose a station system that talks about a specific room, so in this case it says spend an action in the drone control, this is a drone card, you need to find that tile and shuffle it into the top 7 tiles of your stack. So let me just grab the stack again. So here's the drone control tile. So I take the rest of the tiles, and now it said shuffle matching tile into top 10 in the stack. So basically, after I've shuffled this, I just take the top 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and including that would be the top 10. So I take those and then I shuffle this in somewhere, and I give that a shuffle again. And I just put that on top. Now, if you choose a station system that has a fixed number of uses, such as this one has 2 uses, then you take 2 generic tokens, which are these golden ones, and you just put 2 tokens on that, and every time you use that ability, you remove 1 token to keep track of how many times you've used it. Now, this specific ability with the drones uses X because it basically uses these drone tokens, which are double-sided, and there are 6 of them, basically 1 for each player, because you can play up to a maximum of 6. So I just keep those tokens nearby the card. Now, next we take the station board, which is here, the station track. So you take this plastic tray and just put it near your station board. I'll just move it a bit here. And this has numbered spots 1 through 40, and these will indicate the number of turns you will take, because after every player's turn, one of these tokens is flipped, which I will explain when I explain the rules. But you refer to your scenario guide again, and this says the random events here, which are the tokens with the station here on the back. They tell you how many you need, and these are randomized. So you got 4 station events. That's these tokens. I've put 4 of these aside. There's 4 explorer events, which are these tokens with the little guy on it. So we have 4 of those, and we have 10 blanks. So that's 10 of these, which have nothing on it. So nothing happens when you draw one of those. And then otherwise you see these yellow and these red tokens. The yellow ones are scenario triggers, which are red from the book. And the red ones are combat triggers, which will trigger any monsters that are on the station at that point. So you look at this and then you set up this. So I'll do that quickly. And since these are randomized, you basically just flip them around, and these as well, and these as well. And you just mix them up a bit, and then you fill in those slots. All right, so I've put all the tokens in place. I've randomized these station tokens, and the red and the yellow ones are placed as indicated here as well. Next, just take all the tokens you might use. There's like damage tokens here, which come in the -1 and -5 denominations. Just keep those nearby somewhere. There's these golden generic tokens, which you might use at some point. There's quest tokens right here. Just keep all of those tokens nearby. You might also need shield tokens depending on the scenario or the number of players, and you might also find rooms that need additional surge tokens. So just keep all of those somewhere close where everybody can reach them. Next, we need to make a creature holding area as is indicated here. So every scenario will have certain scenario creatures. And in this case, it's very simple. It's just one creature, but we can have up to 5 of this pirate crew. So to do that, you take all of your monster cards, which are these, and again, you go through the deck and see what you've unlocked. So that's all of these cards up until here. So I don't use the next cards until I start playing the Machinations campaign. So this is still core campaign, so all of these are gonna go away. And this will have all kinds of different cards. So here is the pirate crew that we are starting with. So I'm taking that card already. All the other enemies basically are kept as the random creature deck, except bosses. So this is a boss and this is a boss. So those two cards are returned to the box, and I take all these other monsters and I give that deck a shuffle, and I just keep that nearby as well. And for the creature holding area, you take one of these cards. That's the creature damage track. It's double-sided. Now I'm going to use up to 5 here, so I can just use this, and these numbers indicate which character I'm targeting. So if I put this on here, then this helps me keep track of the damage of each individual monster. And if I ever need more than 6, I simply take a second of these, flip that around, here it is, creature damage track, and I just put that underneath this one, and now you'll see numbers 9 or 7 through 12, so I can have up to 12 of that same creature on the playing area. So in this case, we only need 5, so I'll just keep all these other ones at the ready if I need to draw any other creatures from the random creature deck. So I just put this one to the side as well, and one of the players can keep track of that. Now, since we need 5 of these pirate crew, I'm also taking 5 of these standees, and these are also numbered. This has a 1 here in the bottom of the standee, and you search your standees up to number 5 in this case. If you need more, you're gonna take more, and you put these somewhere within easy reach as well. Then you decide who gets to be the expedition leader, and that will be the person handling the scenario book and reading any events that trigger and the start of the scenario. And then you can start playing by reading the mission briefing, the objectives, which are also on that card, and your win-lose conditions. So you basically read all of this. There's a bit of flavor text there that you read to all the players. You don't read any of these triggers unless that specific trigger happens during the game. That's when you read only that specific part, and that's it. So that one player will take the book, and then you can start playing. Let's explain the rules. So after having set up your game, it's time to start playing. And you're taking turns. Every player will play their character, and after you've taken your actions, then you will flip over one of these station tokens. So that's 1 through 7, and you start here again at 8, etc. So you can already see these are basically random events. This is a scenario trigger, this is a combat trigger, and I'll explain what those mean in a bit. So a hero will take their turn, and a hero has a move action, a basic action, and there's also free actions they can take. A move action is very straightforward. You simply check your movement, which is this compass symbol here. It says here movement, and Jack Holden's movement is 3. So that means he can move up to 3 tiles away. Now, if you're simply moving, you can just move through an open door, which means 2 connecting tiles that have this white line. That's an open door. So I can move 1 and even 2 towards the bridge. Now, if I wanted to explore, which is also an action I can do, then I can use my movement to move towards half a door basically. So this is a doorway. If there is not a white line, that means there is no doorway there, so you can't move through that side of the tile. But I can move through here, or here in the back there's one. There's no door here, but there is one here. So I could do, for example, 1 and then 2, which means I would draw a tile from the stack, and then I can put that tile connecting to that door. So I can't use this side, but I can use this side, or this side, or that side. So depending on what I want, I'm just gonna do it like this for now. So I connect the weapons center, and then I automatically move there, but that does end my movement. So I can't explore further, even though I have some movement points left. And after exploring a new room, you also gain +1 power. Now, if a newly explored room has some kind of effect, then you resolve that immediately. And all these rooms have these text boxes that tell you if there is some kind of effect. So this one, for example, says when explored, place 3 search tokens, because it's always indicated here as well with a search icon and a number. And it also says if you gain +1 item by searching, select the next available weapon. So instead of just drawing a card from the item deck, you would look until you find a weapon and then shuffle the rest back in. And the item deck is the deck of these golden cards with the crate on it. So if I were to search, I'll put the 3 search tokens here as well, 1, 2, 3. And if I explored here and I'm now here, then I can use a search action, which is a free action. I will simply draw until I find a weapon such as this, the plasma blade, and I would keep that weapon so I can place it here if I want to. So I'll just put that one back. You normally would shuffle that back in, so I'll just put the deck there. And should you at any time explore a room that would seal off the entire station so you could no longer explore, and there are still tiles in the stack, then you basically don't place that room. You just put it back on the bottom of the stack and draw a new one until you find one that will have another doorway so you can explore further. And if this should happen through an event, so if a certain event triggers and it tells you to place one of the set aside tiles here, so let's see if there's perhaps in this scenario there was a tile. Yeah, this one, for example, the med bay here. So the med bay only has a door here and not on all of these sides. And if that would be an action that happens, a scenario trigger, and I have to place this, and that would also seal off the station, but I still have tiles left, or perhaps here, then I do the opposite. I draw another tile from the regular stack and place that first, and then if that has multiple exits, then I connect the med bay to that. So that's moving and possibly exploring as the first main action. Another action is to start combat, which means if you are in a room with 1 or more creatures, you may use your action to start a combat. And I will explain how combat works in a bit. So perhaps, if there was a creature here, then I could choose to fight that creature. A third action I can take is healing. Now I can only heal if I'm below my starting stamina. So if I had lost some health during the game and I wanted to heal, then I can perform a knowledge check. So my knowledge is the book here. So I have 2 dice to roll for my knowledge check. And I can also try and heal someone else who is in the room with me. So if another explorer was in the same room as I was and I wanted to heal them instead of myself, I can do that as well. Check stays the same, so there's a knowledge check of 2. So I take 2 dice, I roll them, and I see if I have any successes. Now, any laser gun here, that's a success. And there's 2 laser guns on the dice and 2 double, so that's double successes. And anything else is basically not a success, is a failure. There's also the audacity symbol here. And anytime you perform a check or a roll or combat, so basically anytime you roll these dice, if you have any audacity symbols on your roll, then you can spend 1 audacity to turn all the audacity symbols from your roll into successes. And for each success that I roll, I gain 1 stamina, or the other hero that I am healing, if not myself. I cannot heal if there is an enemy in the same room as I am in, and I can also not heal further than my starting stamina. Another action a hero can take is the adrenaline action, and that means if I have less than 5 courage, I can also make a check, and that will be a mythos check with this, which is this elder sign over here. It says mythos here, so that's 4 dice for me. So I can just simply do that. I roll, in my case, 4 dice, and I rolled 3 successes here. This is not a success, and I could possibly spend an audacity to gain another success if I had more. So you only need to spend 1 audacity for all the audacity symbols to become successes. So if this was also an audacity, then spending that single audacity point would also turn that one into a success. But that wasn't. That was a critical failure symbol. So now in this case, let's say I've got these 4 successes. I can add a 1, 2, 3, 4 courage. And once a character has more than 5 courage, they become focused. So remember on these level up cards, these action things, let me just bring that up closer. You have an unfocused and a focused ability. And that means the unfocused is just my base attack in Jack Holden's case. But if I'm focused, I add another die to my attack dice pool. So that's really good. So I can only take that adrenaline action if I'm below 5. And again, just like with healing, I can also give somebody else courage instead of myself. I can basically give a motivational speech or something. And you can also not gain more than the maximum here of 10. And also, just like with healing, I cannot gain courage when there is a monster in the same room with me. A 5th main action that I could choose is the investigate action. Now this is something I can do in any room, and I can use that action to perform a thorough investigation of the room. And to do that, you simply take one of the d6s, you roll that, and then you check the result with this table on the back of the rule book here that has basically all of your actions. We're now at investigate. Investigation results, basically it says on a roll of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you get these results. So the 1, you spawn an enemy from the random deck. At a 2, you lose 1 stamina, so basically 1 hit point. At 3, you lose 1 courage, so that in this case I roll a 3, so I lose a courage and become unfocused again. On a 4, I gain 1 power, so that means experience right there. And on a 5, I gain a courage, and on a 6, I get to draw from the item deck. So basically that's kind of like a 50-50 positive or negative outcome. And finally, the 6th possible action you can take for your main action is using an ability. So if a component, such as an explorer ability, a station system, an item, or a room tile, has the action in its description. So for example, let's see if this one has an action. It should have the action keyword on it. So here, for example, this docking station here has action. So if this character wanted to use that as their main action, this says welcome party, search tile stack and place another boarding entrance. So you can search your stack for for another boarding entrance. There are tiles that allow you to, well, let me see if I can find one, that allow you to add another docking entrance. So for example here, airlock, it says boarding entrance. And it's also a transporter location. When explored, spawn 1 enemy. It has that enemy symbol there. So all these tiles have different kinds of stuff that happens. But yeah, some of them, this is also a boarding entrance, the hangar bay. This one again has an action here. So yeah, all these tiles have actions, but you can also have items that have an action. But if a component does not have the action keyword on it, then it may be used at the indicated time without taking an action. And of course, you can also use your main action as a second move action, but you can't explore a second time. And in addition to those actions, there's also, like I mentioned, free actions, which means if an item, like I said before, doesn't have the action keyword on it, you can use it at an indicated time. Usually it's indicated on the card or item or tile itself. You can also use a station system that doesn't have the action keyword on it if you want to. You can trade with another character as long as they are on the same tile as you. So I could give my my plasma blade to Balthazar there, for example, or I can search, and searching as a free action is really good because that means I can just take a token here, and like we demonstrated earlier, in this case, in the weapons center, I get to search the deck for the first weapon I find and then take that, which I've already demonstrated. And then you simply discard that token. And the storage bay, for example, simply says, as an action though, discard an item to gain +1 item. So I could do that. That is not searching. That means I can discard an item to draw another one, so I can exchange things at random. Or I can just use the search action for free, discard a token and draw a card. So after you've taken your actions, the station phase begins, and that's when you activate the next token here on the station track. So after first turn from the first player, you flip over the first token. Now if there's a blank, nothing happens. Whoop-de-doo, next player can go. Now let's see what else we have. There's some couple of blanks here. So there's also station events like this. So whenever a station event happens, those are basically unexpected developments on the station. Then you take the scenario book and you go to the appropriate station event here, the section in that scenarios pages. And so this is station event number 1. It's the first one that happens. You read this, or the player that has the book reads this, the leader, and then sometimes you need to do a check or some kind, or just something happens. You simply read and resolve what it says. It's usually pretty straightforward. If there is, let's see if we can find another one here. Here it is, an explorer event. Basically you do the same thing, but this is for the entire station, mostly affects all players. This is for one player. So the active player who just finished their turn will have their explorer event. Now the first time a player during any mission gets a explorer event, you first take your own personal archive, and every player has one of these, every character has one of these booklets. So in my case, Jack Holden, I take this. And before you start playing, you can, check out what their character's bio is, basically. And you can read the introduction to everybody. And it's basically memories. So here's a recall page. The first time this happens, so don't read this if you don't want any spoilers. You check the first reveal. So this is for the core missions, and there's plenty for every arcing story, basically, for every campaign. So you read this, which is basically a bit of background, and then you go to the recall section. You take a d6 again, and you roll that d6, right? And then you check the appropriate number, and you see what that does. You read that out loud, and you usually gain power, courage, or audacity, either 1 or 2 points. So that's usually a positive thing. You only do that once per scenario, so every player can only have a maximum of 1 reading from that book. And after you've done that, or if it's the second time you've had an Explorer event, you again take the scenario book, and the expedition leader will read the Explorer events. So these are the Explorer events, and then again, this is the first one on the track, so you read the first one here, and sometimes again you need to do some kind of check, and you resolve what it says, and you play on. So we haven't gotten there yet, of course. So if this was the 4th turn, then after that player's turn, we would have a scenario trigger, and after that, a combat trigger. Now, these are always fixed. The scenario will tell you where to put these, which we saw during the setup. So the first time a scenario trigger happens, you simply check which one that was. So this was the 4th one. It also says here on the track that that is number 4. And these are also on this card here. So these scenario triggers will correspond with these numbers here. And then you again take the book and the leader will read the event scenario trigger here, event track number 4. So you read that and you resolve what it says. It's basically the same, but this is basically the story also. So every trigger that happens tells you a little bit of what is going on. So you do that, then the next player plays. Now when you have a combat trigger, so let's say there's a couple of enemies on the board already, so let's say they're over here, and player has taken their turn, and this happens, then you don't need to read anything. It basically means that all creatures in the station immediately move and attack. Now if there are no creatures on the board and a combat happens, then you spawn a random creature. So you basically draw the first card, you check that creature, you take that creature's standee, you also take one of these damage tracks, you put the creature on it, and then the standee of that creature, I just grabbed one. You normally take one with the number 1 on it, but since there's only one, I just grabbed one. This one has number 5, and they will spawn in a docking tile. So at this point, this is the only one that has a dock here, the docking station. So it spawns there, and it will also immediately move if it needs to and attack. And I will explain how combat works in a bit. Now at some point you will perhaps have gotten through all of these tokens, unless you manage to trigger the conclusion of the event of the scenario before that. But if you're playing a timed scenario, some scenarios are timed, then the scenario ends immediately after the last event token on the track is resolved. And if you've not completed the scenario objectives by then, you lose the scenario and you'll have to start again. If you're playing a scenario that is not timed, then you simply continue after the last event token on the track, and when that's resolved during all the remaining station phases, the active player must resolve either a combat event or no event, and this is instructed in the scenario guide. So the scenario guide will always tell you what's going to happen. Now you may have noticed that some of these tiles have these different symbols. We've already seen the search symbol, and there are different ones. So I'll just use the guide here to show you that there is like exploration rooms here, there's spawn rooms with this monster logo, search rooms, we've seen these. The skull is usually a trap room, something bad happens, and these arrows mean that there are action rooms, and this is all pretty straightforward. Not going to go too deep into that to save some time. There are also rooms that can transport you from one room to another by simply moving with your character using a move action. You would move out of one room and enter another one wherever it is on the station. And you can also move your shuttle to another boarding entrance. So this docking station, like I said, is a boarding entrance. I could move here and then use a second movement to move the shuttle, if there is, of course, another boarding entrance, and then dock there. But my movement would end there. I can't move out in the same turn again. And enemies can never enter your shuttles, nor will they use transporters. Now I've also briefly touched on this, that once you've passed 6 courage or past 5 courage and you're at 6 or more, then you use your focused ability on these ability cards, and whenever you reach 10 power, you will reset your power track to 1, and you can choose one of these cards. This is a combat upgrade, but some are called differently. At least the cards that say level 1, and you can flip them over to level 2, and then you'll have a stronger ability. Now these 3 slots are technically only used for your ability cards. I just put these there because I didn't have anything else, but that also means you can only have a maximum of 3 of these ability cards, and as far as I could tell in the game, every character only has 3 of those, but you will unlock them as you play through the scenarios. Now you can only have 1 combat upgrade, so this one, as you've seen here, is a combat upgrade. So if I want to get another one, then I will have to discard this one, replacing my active combat upgrade if I gain a new one. Another thing that happens when I level up, so I go to 10 and then back to 1 again, aside from flipping over one of these cards, is that I also heal 3 stamina, unless I'm at my maximum, of course, and I also gain 1 audacity, like that. Should you level up at the end of a combat, and again, combat will also give you some bonuses there, I'll explain that in a bit, but should you level up at the end of a combat, and you were reduced to 0, so basically taking away your final health there, then you do immediately gain 3 stamina. So that basically saves you from being downed. And if you should level up while you already have 3 of these ability cards at level 2, you do gain the 3 stamina and the audacity, but you don't level up any cards, or you do not take a new ability. We've already also touched on items previously, so you can use items as well. Some require an action, some don't. Some have limited uses, and that will say on the card. Sometimes you need to discard it, some don't. There's also items like grenades that require you to put like tokens on them, and every time you spend a grenade you take a token away, and then when the last one's gone you don't have that item anymore. And others will require you to do a check, so again by rolling dice, by checking which ability you need to use for that check, and then you roll the dice and see if you get any successes. And most items cannot be used when you're down, so when you're at 0 hit points, and it means you put down your character like so. And I'll explain a bit more about that in just a bit. But you can't use items unless the item specifically says so. Now sometimes you will have companions, and a companion is basically an avatar of an explorer and other key characters on the station. So sometimes they're NPCs if it were. And they're used in specific scenarios to progress the scenario narrative or to balance gameplay when there's less than a full team. So with 1, 2, or 3 players, no, actually 1 or 2 players, then you get some companions. And of course, you cannot use a companion that's already being used as a player hero. And every companion is attached to a specific explorer. You can't trade them. They're basically just yours. They're always with you, and they are not represented by a standee. They're basically just next to your arm device here, your player board. And each companion has a unique ability described on their card, and some of them will have limited uses. So again, you get those generic tokens that you place on them, which you spend if you use those companions' abilities. Now, anytime you're taking damage, your character takes damage, you may instead apply that damage to your companion. You can't split it. You have to either take all the damage or give it all to your companion. And if you or your companion is downed by a single source of damage, any additional damage is simply ignored. Now, if a companion gets downed, their companion card is removed from play for the remainder of the scenario. An explorer can use their healing action to heal companions, which should be in the same room as you, so your own companion will always be with you in the same room, but you can also heal another player's companion. And when there's some kind of effect that deals damage to all explorers, or all explorers in a room, that means you and your companion. Now, during the setup, we saw that every scenario has a number of creatures that are in the creature holding area. So in this case, that was the pirate crew, and we had 5 of those. That also means that there may never be more of those creatures on the board than the number of standees that were set aside during setup. And anytime you're directed to spawn a scenario creature and there are no standees of that type remaining in the holding area, then no creature spawns, and instead all explorers take damage equal to the creature's damage value, which is the X on the card here. So in this case, that's 3 damage. So let's have a look at these creature cards then and their anatomy. So here it says the pirate crew, that's the name. This is the type. This is a starling enemy. There's different types of creatures. It has an ability, which is also always described here, and if it would stay in focus, that would be nice. It has 4 movement, 7 hit points, stamina, and it deals 3 damage. Now there's another number here, and that is used in combat, and again I will cover combat in a bit. Now, whenever a creature is spawned, if there is a scenario-specific creature that spawns, you simply find that creature's card in the stack of monster cards and its standee, and you spawn it as the scenario dictates. Now, if you're exploring and you cause a creature to spawn, so you have a spawn room, which is one of the rooms that have the eyes on it, the monster eyes here, that icon. So here we go. Here's the hangar bay that has the yellow eyes in the top right corner there. So that means this spawns a creature. So if I would explore that one, so let's say my character is going here and explores this room, maybe I'll put it actually like this so you can actually see it upright. That means that you spawn a creature. Now, when that happens, you basically read what it says, and it says, when explored, spawn and immediately attack with one creature. And it has the eye symbol here. So again, that means I draw a card. Last time we drew this card, right? So let's say that happened now. We drew the Fallen, we found the token, and you of course spawn it in that same room, and then it will attack. So you engage in combat. Now, in any other situation, just like a combat situation during the station's turn, and there's no standees, no creatures on the station at that moment, you simply spawn one and place it at a boarding entrance. And if there are others and you still have to spawn one, you place it on a boarding entrance with the fewest creatures. So if this hangar bay already had one, then I would spawn it in this boarding entrance. Now, if we were playing with 3 heroes, so we've got Jack Holden here, Balthazar, and Nakatomi over there. That's 3 players. Remember earlier, that means that with 1, 2, or 3 players, you're getting shield tokens for your monsters. So in this case, all of the monsters that are currently on the board, every time a monster spawns, we have 2 of these pirate crews. So that means number 1 over here and number 2 over there. And also the Fallen, which is over there. Now this is number 5, so I would technically have to put it here. Doesn't really matter for this example. And the shield token basically makes them stronger. So whenever I attack and I deal damage, the shield always absorbs 2 damage and is only removed if I exceed that number of damage. So if I deal 1 or 2 damage, basically nothing happens. If I deal 3 damage, the shield token is removed and the 1 remaining damage is dealt to that creature. And you might also encounter certain scenarios that tell you that the creatures in that scenario have shields. So then what happens when one of these combat events trigger? So first they move and then they attack. Now, a creature will first use its maximum movement to move through the most efficient route towards the closest explorer. If they are already at an explorer, they don't move at all. So this one is already there, this one is there, and this one would move here because this is 1 step away and this is 2 steps away. So he would move over here. I'll move these to the front because these are smaller than the other standees. So after moving, the creatures attack. If there are multiple explorers that a creature would target, then it prioritizes the explorer with the highest power. So if one of those would have, high power and the other one has less, then in this case, the first monster to attack, which is this one with the number 1, would attack Jack Holden. So this one would prioritize this player. And then the second creature would attack the next hero with the highest power. And if there would be a third creature, that one would attack the third one with highest power, or just go back to the first hero again. So, they would alternate which heroes to attack. If there are multiple enemies and only 1 explorer, then each creature attacks the explorer 1 at a time in order of the highest to lowest combat score. So that's this number in yellow. And if multiple creatures, if there are different creatures, of course, have the same combat score, then you simply roll a d6 to decide which one goes first. So this would be the first one, rolls a 5, that's the second one, rolls a 3, so that would mean this one would attack first and then that one. So then finally, combat. How does it work? So first of all, whenever a combat event triggers or you use an action to perform a combat action on an enemy, you build your explorer's dice pool. So you check your base combat stat, which is this icon here. In this case, it's 3. So I take 3 dice. And if I have any combat bonuses from my items or abilities, so in this case, if you remember, I had this combat upgrade and I've leveled it to level 2 because I leveled up at some point, and I have 6 courage, so I'm focused. This means I add +2 to the combat dice pool, so I can take 2 additional dice. And after I've done that, I simply roll the dice. And just like with all performance checks, if I roll Audacity, I may spend 1 Audacity to turn all of the Audacity results into successes. Now, some of the creatures have an effect on it with a critical failure. So if I rolled this critical failure symbol, now this one and this one doesn't have any of that. So let me just see if I can find one. So for example, this quartermaster over here says power armor. If any critical failure is rolled, reduce damage received by 2. So that is always specified on the card itself. And of course, if that card has no such symbol on it, then this means nothing. So then I deal damage equal to my successes. So I have 4 successes here, plus possible damage modifiers from abilities and effects. And in this case, if this creature has a shield, I deal 4 damage. So 2 damage is absorbed by the shield, and the shield goes away for monster number 1, so that's that one. And I deal 2 more damage, so I take these damage tokens and I place 2 damage tokens at the first creature's stats there. And if, of course, the number of damage tokens exceed or is equal to the creature's health, which is 7 for this pirate crew, then the standee is removed, returned to the creature pool in case of a scenario creature, or just returned and the card returned to the deck of random creatures if it's a randomly spawned creature. Now, you might also get attacked back. So to determine if your explorer takes damage, you check your number of successes and compare that to the creature's combat score, and that's the yellow number in the right corner here. So in this case, it's 3. If I rolled equal successes as that number or more, the explorer takes no damage. But if it's less, then I do take damage, and I take damage equal to the number of damage that the creature does, which is the X indicated here, and that's a fixed number, so in this case that would be 3 damage. So I would take 3 damage, and if I was at 3, that would mean I was knocked out and I would be downed if I didn't have any items that would trigger or give me any health, or if I didn't just level up at that point. Now, if I managed to damage a creature, which I did in this case, then I gain 1 power. You always gain 1 power if you manage to damage a creature. If additionally I did not take any damage, I not only gain 1 power, but I also gain 1 courage. But on the other hand, if both of us didn't deal damage, so I didn't deal damage to them, they didn't deal damage to me, I gain nothing. And if I didn't deal damage to the creature, because possibly, I rolled 1 or 2 damage, the shield absorbs it, and it's less than the 3 here, so they would deal 3 damage to me, then I lose a courage. And that is how combat works. There's also ranged combat. Sometimes some weapons or explorer abilities will allow you to use ranged combat, and when that happens and you're 1 space away from a creature, you can shoot them from afar, basically from 1 spot away, only through open doors though. And it lets you just do combat without taking damage. So you always do damage to the creature, depending on what you roll, of course, but you never take damage back. If you're using a ranged combat action in the same room, you basically do a normal combat action. But if you are using a combat or a ranged action from 1 space away, you do alert the creature. So after your attack, a creature will come towards you in the room you're in, unless there's another explorer in that room, because then they're basically already engaged in combat. There's also a section in the rule book about versus combat, which means explorer versus explorer, which might sometimes happen, or even creature versus creature. And if you are ever reduced to 0 hit points, which I touched on before, so basically if you're still at 1, you're still alive, you're still conscious, but if that last hit point gets taken away, then you have to put your standee flat on the surface, and that means you're downed. Now, when you are downed, you can be targeted with heal actions and abilities that heal stamina by other players, but you can't take an action or a free action yourself, nor can you participate in combat or use explorer abilities. You will also not be targeted or attacked by creatures, and you're not affected by events, and you can't make performance checks. You also do not reserve courage from other players' kill bonuses, and you can also not be traded with. And before the start of your next turn, if you're not healed in any way by other players, for example, then you will be wounded. So when that happens, let me just get these dice out of the way here. When that happens, you flip over your character board here. It's hard to do with one hand. So I flip that over. Now you're wounded. And as you can see, this has different stats. So you set your health to the stat indicated here, which is lower than you would normally have. Same with your audacity and your courage. Your power stays where it was, and then you can set up your standee again, and you can continue taking your turn. Now, if you, in your wounded state, take damage again, and enough damage that would take you to 0 or less hit points, then you once again have to put your standee down, and if you aren't healed by the start of your next turn, you're done, you're out of the game, you're defeated, and that means the entire party loses the scenario and you'll have to start again. There are also some additional rules for encountering creatures in a room, and that is called being overpowered. And there's also something called evasion. So I'll touch on those here. So when creatures and explorers are occupying the same room together, the creatures will overpower the explorers if the number of creatures equals or exceeds the number of explorers in that room, or if there's a boss creature in the room. Boss creatures always overpower the explorers. And while you're overpowered, you cannot interact with tokens in the room, such as these search tokens. You cannot use a room action, if there is a room action in that room. And if you want to leave the room, you suffer a so-called evasion penalty. This also happens if you want to move through a room that has creatures in it. So if I would want to leave this room while being overpowered, that means I take 1 damage per creature in the room. So that would mean if I'm at 6 stamina, I would then lose 2 stamina because there's 2 creatures. And a boss creature in the room would cause you to lose 3 stamina. This also happens if you are moved as the result of an event or effect, not just when you're moving yourself. Now, like I said before, creatures never enter a shuttle. So if I flee into a shuttle and there's a creature here, for example, and the creature wants to attack me, then it can't enter, but it will attack the shuttle instead. Now, it will only do that if it is in a boarding entrance, of course. It has to be next to the shuttle. And also if there are no other explorers in the room, because then it will be engaged with that explorer. And it will only attack the shuttle if there is, in fact, an explorer inside. And when a creature attacks a shuttle, you basically just put damage tokens on the shuttle. And if it ever has 10 or more damage, you remove the shuttle, it's basically destroyed, and you move any explorers back into the boarding entrance. Now, some creatures will have an exterior label on them. Let me just find one. So for example, this Leviathan here says this is an ancient creature, but also exterior there. Now, any exterior monsters still move and attack inside the station like all other creatures, but they can also be targeted by exterior type station systems, such as blaster turrets. And that's all the basic rules, and you simply keep playing until you get to read either the win or the lose scenario conclusion, and that's when you either restart the scenario if you lost or move on to the next one. And also note that at the end of a scenario, if you've won, you usually unlock some stuff like an Explorer ability card or items, so those will be unlocked from the cards that you have, and you can use them in the next scenario. So then you can mark off here in the book if you've succeeded or failed at a mission. And even if you fail and you play it again and you succeed next time, you just mark off the mission success box here. But if you want to skip a mission because you failed it, maybe you failed it a couple of times, you can also just check off the alternate reality control, that's the red box, and just move on to the next one. And that will have repercussions later. I'm not going to spoil anything. And if you ever manage to play through all of these campaigns, or maybe you've skipped some, but I would recommend playing them all in order, there is the final Oblivion campaign. And the Oblivion campaign is explained separately in the rulebook right here, because it brings into the game new components such as the galaxy map here with planet tokens that you put on it. There's alliance tokens that you use, the threat marker of this creature right there. So this is a basically a new kind of gameplay where you're actually moving around the station standee across the galaxy map, and the station itself has a character board. So I will leave that for you to explore on your own. Here's a bit more about how to play that Oblivion campaign and exploring the galaxy. So there's some additional rules there, even cosmic encounters. So yeah, quite the number of content here, and the rulebook also has a very handy index in the back and a player reference sheet on the back that also helps with remembering your actions, the free actions, the investigation results, combat sequence, and what happens if you damage a creature or vice versa, and how you gain points or lose points. The icons are explained here. The racial types all have an icon as well, and the different room types over there. Okay, I hope this has given you a good overview of how the game plays. I may have skipped a couple of details in the rules here and there, but I think you get the gist of it. So let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on Secrets of the Lost Station by Everything Epic Games. Let's start with the components, and there are a lot of components. Now I have the standee edition of the game, which comes in a rather big box. It does fit inside a Kallax cubby, takes up about half the size of one square. And there is, of course, also the miniatures version, which comes in a huge box that looks like the station itself in a cubed shape instead of a sphere. But that is also an option if you think you're gonna paint the miniatures. Then absolutely, that would have been really good to have. The miniatures that I've seen online look amazing. But the standee version is just fine. The standees look really nice. The art on them is really cool. They're like thick cardboard. You got your transparent stands there, so that looks nice on the tiles as well. You've got the dice. I love the dice. They're 12-sided dice. They are silver, marbled, look really cool, and there's a lot of them, which is also really fun. You got all of these tiles for your map of the station. You've got your ship here. There's a whole bunch that you unlock right from the start, and there's a bunch that you unlock as you go through the scenarios. And these are also a very thick, nice cardboard quality and printed really nicely. They just look really good, and the text on them is big enough to be easy to read, and you don't need reading glasses, or at least I don't. So that's good. I like that the game comes with these player boards, these ARM devices as they are called. Really like that. This is well designed. You've got all the colored cubes in here so you can keep track of all your stats here, your stamina, your courage, your audacity, and your power, which is your experience basically. Your character sheet fits in the middle and won't fall out. All you need is that one single EOP token to keep track if you used your special ability that you can use once per quest, per scenario, and then you simply discard that token, and that's basically it. So you can keep track with all of this, and it works really well. The only thing that I found strange about this is that all these tracks start at 1, not at 0. If I'm at 1, can I spend that last one and go beyond it? So the only thing I would have changed on these tracks was to have a 0 on the board. So that's actually a change that could be easily made on the board itself and not in these plastic trays, because they'd be fine. You would need an extra spot, or you just, go to 0 and this only goes up to 9 instead of 10 perhaps. That would also fix that. Also, on the character boards themselves are very clear. So these have the name and the symbol. This only has the name, but there are symbols for these as well. On the back of the rulebook, you have this, I'll show you. There's an overview of all the things, which is very handy. So here it is. This is basically all you need during your game, and it's really handy that it's on the back of the rulebook. I really like it when publishers do that. But it'll tell you in icons what happens to those stats. If you get a +1 or a -1 or whatever, that is all explained here in these icons. But I always have trouble remembering what icon is what. Now there's also a handy reference here. So this says, this symbol, that's power. This symbol is courage. And this symbol is audacity, etc. But why aren't those 4 also printed on the board, on your character sheet? Because that would make it so much easier, at least for me. I have trouble remembering all of that. So if they only had put those symbols next to these, that would make it so much easier. So that's a couple of changes I would have made to this. Otherwise, I mean, it does its job and it does work. And if you play this a lot, you'll remember all of that, of course, easily. I also like this station board here, the station track, which has all of these circles with numbers in it, and it starts from 1 and it goes to 7, etc., all the way up to 40. So you can have a maximum of 40 turns depending on the scenario. You fill these with tokens. The scenario will tell you how many of these scenario triggers there are. This is usually, the yellow ones are scenario triggers described in the scenario book. You have these combat triggers, which just means that the enemies, the monsters, take a turn, so they move towards you, they start attacking. And the other ones with the station can either be blank or trigger something else. There's explorer events, which are also in the scenario guide, and there's all kinds of different ones. I don't have any here in this example. But the scenario book will tell you how that works. And I like that they are easily taken out by these indentations here. You just push your finger, you can take them out, and you flip them around and you see what that does. Very clever. I love that. And every scenario is different. I think this works very well and better than just drawing a token from a bag, for example, because if you do that, you can draw anything. And here it kind of has fixed positions, fixed number of turns before one of these happen, and the rest is randomized. So that's really clever. That is a unique kind of mechanism that I really enjoy about this game. Otherwise, the components are really good. I mean, the cards are of a very good quality, very thick and nicely printed and clear and everything. So all of the cards are fine. The tokens are also of the same thickness as the standees and the boards. So they're really good, and there's a lot of tokens. The only thing I didn't like about the packaging mostly is that the game has this single insert in the bottom, which is great for all the cards and for your dice. There's room in there to put all the dice in, to put all the cards in, as long as you don't sleeve them. If you want to sleeve this game, you're going to need a different insert, build something yourself. So there's a lot of tokens, and you sort them into Ziploc bags. So you've got like 10 different Ziploc bags, and you need to space them all in here or just toss them in, and hopefully the lid will close. I did a full unboxing of the game, so if you want to see all of the components and everything that's in the box, check out that video. But yeah, getting everything back in is a bit of a chore, especially, you know, using Ziploc bags, because you need to take everything out first when you set up the game and then put everything back again. And that just takes a bit of time. So I wish there was a better insert for this. Now, I'm going to probably make one myself from foam core, but that's the only, you know, minor issue that I have with this. Now, a lot of games don't come with decent inserts, so I can't blame them. That's probably very costly. But it would have been nice if this had the perfect insert so you can just grab the trays, put them on a table, and you're ready to play. Because this game does have a bit of a setup. But otherwise, the components are absolutely excellent. The artwork is also amazing. I love the art on this. You've got artwork on all the standees, which is great. All the artwork on the cards are really, really well done. There's a bunch of them. All these different enemies have their own art. All the rooms have their own art, and it looks really cool and sci-fi. I love the art on the box. There's just a lot of art overall in this game, and it is excellent. So big thumbs up for that. And I also like the theme a lot. It's basically the spiritual successor to Secrets of the Lost Tomb, which is more like a fantasy, you know, Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider kind of theme. And this is as a sci-fi theme, The Lost Station. So it's set in space on this huge space station, which has rooms that constantly reconfigure, just like the movie Cube. If you've seen that, you basically have all these square rooms, and they move around between every session, every mission you play, because you're drawing them from a pile, and they're shuffled, so it's random. So your station layout is randomized every time, and of course you're choosing where to put them as well. You can configure however you want. So that's pretty cool. I really like that. It really feels you're on this semi-sentient or AI-driven space station, and you're trying to fix it because it's broken down, and the story behind all of this is really cool. There's space pirates invading the station. You want to fight them off. You want to try and get the station's defenses online that can help you. And it's just a really, really cool theme. And because, you know, there's so much story here, I'll just put this to the side. There is the scenario guide, and this is a big, heavy book. I mean, it is thick. There's 92 scenarios in here. There's a lot of pages, over 358 pages, 360 pages, and that's just a whole lot of content. And the story is pretty fun, what we've played so far. We're not super far into the game, but so far it's been a lot of fun. So the theme absolutely gets 2 thumbs up from me. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. If you've watched the rules section, you'll already have a pretty good idea of how the game plays, but every scenario throws something new at you. There's always something unique and new in each scenario that will trigger at a certain point during the game. And sometimes it's randomized, you don't know when it happens. Sometimes it's simply on the track and it'll happen after X number of turns. And I really like that. It keeps the game fresh, and there's different modes you can play. There's the Lost Mission, so you have all of these big cards, which are the Undiscovered pack. So yeah, we have these Undiscovered missions, and every card is a different mission. And they're basically a way to replay other missions from the scenario guide in a different way. So it adds a new layer of gameplay, and that's pretty cool. New challenges, new difficulty, new replayability. So that is also really good. At first, the first couple of times you play, you'll have to look at this because things get unlocked during the game as you progress through the missions. Things will unlock, and this chart tells you how. So the first time you play, you might be a bit confused, but you set aside the games, the cards, and the components and the tiles that aren't on this sheet, basically. So it tells you what is still locked and when it gets unlocked. So if you're playing the Lycaon missions, then you unlock this tile, the Lycaon shuttle. And if you're playing the Lost missions, you get an extra tile, the escape pod, so that's not in the core mission tiles, etc. So once you've sorted that out, basically what you need to do is you have all these stacks of cards, and you take the cards until you find one of these red or sometimes white cards that tell you, hey, this is locked content. And then only when the scenario guide tells you, you take the cards that are behind that. And here is another one. Campaign content. This is one of the white dividers, basically. And yeah, the rules will tell you, the booklet, scenario guide will tell you when to unlock what. So you keep adding more to the game, making it more and more elaborate and interesting. And I think that's great. You start out with your characters, and you have this smaller character card, which also has a special ability, which I don't know why this is on a separate card. That I think that could have just been on the character dashboard as well. But you also get these special ability cards. So these are basically upgrades, right? You have level 1, and then if you fill your power bar all the way to 10, you can reset it to 1, and then flip this card around, and now it's level 2, and you have upgraded abilities, which is really cool. So you're basically leveling up, but every scenario you start out the same again, so you start fresh. And that also makes it possible to change characters very easily. It's not like you're leveling up your character constantly. You're just unlocking things, and all those unlocked things are basically in your inventory. And then later on, when you're playing with a different character, they'll have unlocked cards, and you pick which ones to use. And you can just jump in with a completely different character, because at every start of the scenario, you start at 0, more or less, again, with perhaps some items. And that's really cool as well. It also makes it very easy to, when you're playing this with friends and somebody has to drop out for whatever reason, you can invite somebody in and they can just step in. And you can also play this with different player counts. So you can play this solo with 2, 3, 4, up to 6 players. And I think that's a lot of fun as well. So you can just add people to the game. If somebody else wants to try it out and you're already somewhere through the game at scenario 5, for example, and someone wants to join in, they totally can. And again, if somebody drops out later, you can just continue playing, and it doesn't matter which character you take, because everything gets unlocked and you just pick what you want and you play. That is excellent. I love that. That is just really, really well done, because this is a big game. It has 92 scenarios, plus the lost missions. And at the end, there's even a different mode, an Oblivion mode, where you basically are the station. You get these cards. And this is basically a star chart, if you will. I'll just slide these off here. So you have this star system, and you have all of these tokens with different planets or space stations or other things on them, and you can put them on this card, and the scenarios will tell you how that works. And then you take the space station standee, and it can move to all these different locations, and stuff will happen. I haven't played that yet, but I've read a bit of it, and that is just really cool. So there's so much here to discover. The gameplay there, it's almost unlimited. There's just so much to play here. So, there's the replayability as well is huge. Even when you've played through everything, you can replay things and it'll be differently, and you can use those lost missions or these undiscovered missions to spice it up and to change it. So there's just more here than most people will probably even be able to play. And everything also plays quite smoothly. It's not too difficult. There are some things that I didn't find very intuitive that you just need to remember. But overall, it's not too difficult. You've got your characters with their actions. You have a move action, and you have one main action. That can be another move, or that can be like exploring into a room. Well, you basically explore automatically when you move out of a room that hasn't been explored yet through a door. You just draw a tile, and you've explored something. So turns are usually pretty quick, and combat is also pretty easy. You have your enemy cards here, and your enemy cards are on these trackers. So this goes up to 6. So you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you need more, you take another one of these, you flip that in the other direction, and then you have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 as well if you need that many of that one creature. And then you take the standees of those creatures, and these are numbered as well. So you can keep track of each individual monster's health by just putting damage tokens next to that number on these tracker cards. So that works really well. And every scenario has a number of monsters that are fixed for that scenario, and you don't spawn more than you have standees for them. So the scenario will tell you, hey, you have 5 of these pirate crew, those are set aside, you take the card, and that's the maximum you can spawn. If you need to spawn something else, you still have your monster deck right here. And again, these are also unlocked per scenario. So you start out with a number of these, and you set aside the ones that are in the scenario guide, and the rest is the random spawn stack. So you draw one from those, you put that on the table, you take the standees, and you have extra monsters. So all of that is pretty easy to follow, but the game is very challenging. There can be a lot of things happening at once, and you really need to discuss what you're gonna do because you don't have that many actions. You have the move action and your main action, so you can attack. And attacking is not without risk, of course, because if you roll too low, you get damaged back. They always, attack you back if you roll too low. So there's always that risk. And if you're all the way to 0, like explaining the rules, you have to be healed by another player before the start of your next turn, or you flip over your character card and now you're hurt, you're damaged, and you're wounded. And you start out with different stats. Your stats will be lower, you will be weaker. So, and if you get downed after that, you're taken out, and that means everybody loses the scenario and you have to retry it. Or you use, the alternate reality thing, the arc, and you cross that off, that you simply skipped the mission, but that might have consequences later on in the game as well, which I will not spoil. So all in all, the gameplay is pretty fun. It's a lot of fun. There are some errors in the scenario guide. There are plenty of errata that you can find online. I've looked on Board Game Geek, and there is an Excel file that you can find online which has a lot of errata. Sadly, because, the game is now, I think, about 4 years old, it's out of print, and the designer has kept track of all the feedback that people have given, but so far, people are roughly at around scenario 50, because that's where, at 46, the errata list stops. So there's errata for a lot of scenarios here, which means that the scenario guide kind of needed an extra check, an extra overhaul. But with 92 missions, I kind of understand that at some point you just have to print this, and you can't keep on playtesting until you found every single error in there. But people have been playing it, of course, giving feedback, and there is an errata that you can just print and slip into your book. But of course, that means that the scenario book isn't perfect. There are flaws, and I do hope that at some point all the errata will be found up until Quest 92, because the rule book is pretty good. I did not find anything strange or odd. There might be a typo or two in there, but the most things I found in the errata list was from the scenario guide. So I am secretly hoping that this game will get a reprint, because the other game, Secrets of the Lost Tomb, did get a 10-year anniversary epic edition, which was crowdfunded on GameFound, I believe, and that was very successful. It just got an overhaul, all new art, and a fixed rule book and scenario guide, which I think is what this game, all it needs is a fixed scenario guide. The rule book, just a couple of typos that can be easily fixed. The art is already good. The components are good. I like the standees. There is a miniatures version, so you really don't need to change anything except the book. And so I hope that will be in the cards in the future. We can only hope. Like I said, replayability is through the roof, is absolutely amazing. And of course, due to its nature, this game is language dependent. It's a narrative game. There's a lot of text in here. It's all in English, so you do need to have a very good grasp of the English language to be able to play this game. If you can still find a copy, I absolutely recommend it. I'm just hoping for a reprint. So yeah, all in all, absolutely 2 thumbs up. I am loving this game. Anyway, that's it. I'd like to thank Chris Batarlos for donating a copy for me to review. Having a blast with this. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And please also check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below or the icon at the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.